Ms Dawn Walker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. On Thursday the 30th of March and Friday the 31st of March, my home in the Northern Rivers region of New South Wales was hit by the biggest floods in 50 years as the aftermath of Tropical Cyclone Debbie moved south towards northern New South Wales. The Wilsons River Valley, where Lismore is located, received up to 430 millimetres of rain in 22 hours. Between 500 and 740 millimetres of rain was recorded in the Tweed River Valley in the 24 hours to 2 a.m. on Friday the 31st of March. Emergency evacuation orders were issued for residents of Lismore, Murwillumbah, Condong, Tumbulgum, Chindera, Tweed Heads, Kingscliff, Fingal Head and Bilambil, Kyogle, Billynudgel, Ocean Shores and New Brighton. Around 20,000 people were evacuated, while 10,000 were without power and a safe water supply. Residents were told to bring important documents, spare clothing and sleeping bags to check on their neighbours and to turn off their electricity and gas before leaving their homes. On Thursday night, the New South Wales Department of Education said 54 public schools, including primary schools and high schools, would be closed on that Friday. Some of the main areas affected were around Murwillumbah, where residents sought refuge in ceiling cavities and on the roofs of their homes, and in Lismore, where the Wilsons River reached a flood height of 11.6 metres. The New South Wales State Emergency Service made about 330 flood rescues in 36 hours over those 2 days. And as people returned to flood-affected areas, they were warned of possible health hazards involved in the clean-up, which authorities say could take a month. People are heartbroken, exhausted and emotional. Many people have lost generations of memories, along with cars, homes, businesses, property, pets, livestock, crops and other valuables. As the water receded, incredible stories of survival that remind us of our humanity have come to the fore, like the terrifying moment when Janet and Daryl Byrne watched as their daughter Erin was almost sucked away by the surging currents that filled their home in Murwillumbah. Fortunately, their 21-year-old son was able to think quickly to give his sister a household cord and drag her back, despite describing the situation as the scariest of his life. Or the Rendell family, who had to climb out a window of their house into a boat before the surging waters completely inundated their Murwillumbah home. The family has lost almost all their possessions, but managed to save their 2 dogs and the cat. They regard themselves to be lucky to be alive. The most tragic and heart-wrenching event involved local mother Stephanie King, who died with 2 of her 3 children after their car plunged into the swollen Tweed River at Tumbulgum. Miss King, her 7-year-old son Jacob, and 11-year-old daughter Ella Jane drowned. Her 8-year-old daughter Chloe May was somehow able to escape from the sinking vehicle. Police say that this heroic mother died trying to save her beautiful children. My heart goes out to their family and friends. Despite the hardship, the resilience shown by our community has been nothing short of remarkable. Groups organically sprung up online and on Facebook to coordinate volunteer efforts, like Lismore Helping Hands and Helping Hands Byronshire. Amazing stories of locals travelling from higher ground to assist people clean up in drenched Lismore and Murwillumbah are not only heartwarming, but are a defining characteristic of the North Coast community. Similarly, donations of clothing, baked goods, utes, for rubbish removal, fridges, linen, white goods, plumbing services, fresh fruit have poured in from our community members and local businesses alike to help the flood recovery effort. Donation centres have sprung up across the region in Lismore, Mullumbimby, Ocean Shores, Byron Bay, Murwillumbah, Pottsville, Tweed Heads and elsewhere to support people who have lost so much. I can't express to the House how proud I am of our community. I've also been told about support coming from further afield, like Dan, a carpenter from Newcastle, who immediately reorganised his work commitment so he could come up and help when he heard about the crisis in the North Coast. And now he's up there replacing doors for local businesses and residents. This grassroots community effort has been in conjunction with the tremendous efforts of our local SES, local councils and rural fire commands and other organisations who have been assisting in the recovery effort. The sad reality is that flood insurance is often unaffordable to many in our community, if not most in our community, adding additional thousands of dollars to a home insurance policy. The cost of flood insurance is no doubt going to skyrocket further out of reach of ordinary people following this latest event. The fact is that insurers are responding to growing impacts of climate change, even if governments aren't. But the tragedy is that it's communities who will suffer the most. And they will suffer increasingly as floods of this magnitude become more common. The tragic loss of life and deep impact on families, homes and businesses are a wake-up call that more must be done. Devastating and potentially life-threatening floods and other natural disasters will only increase in severity and frequency on the North Coast under climate change. The government's own climate modelling for the North Coast shows that autumn rainfall will be up 37% and spring rainfall will be up by 25% by 2070. The North Coast has entered into the age of climate change consequences, and the decisions made now will decide if the community can weather the storm, survive and thrive. Natural disaster areas have been formally declared in the Lismore, Ballina, Byron, Kyogle, Richmond Valley and Tweed local government areas following the North Coast flood. However, only people and businesses in the Tweed and Lismore local government areas have been declared eligible by the federal government for the disaster recovery payment and the disaster recovery allowance to assist them get back on their feet after this devastating event. This is concerning given that the towns of Mullumbimby, Ocean Shores, Billynudgel, Cabbage Tree Island, South Golden Beach, New Brighton were also inundated, and many people there need support to get back on their feet. The Greens are calling on the New South Wales Government to make urgent representations to the federal government to include the people of Ballina and Byron Shires in the disaster recovery payments and the disaster recovery allowance. The New South Wales Government must act urgently on climate change and prioritise a comprehensive adaptation plan to help our communities manage flood events like those my community has just endured.
The Honourable